There's something incredibly satisfying about watching a room full of people abandon logic at the exact same time. Not because they're foolish, not because they lack intelligence, but because they let their reactions outrun their reasoning. And if there is one sitcom that perfected that art form, it's Three's Company. The show didn't just build jokes out of misunderstandings. It built entire emotional avalanches out of knee-jerk responses. One raised eyebrow, one dramatic gasp, one defensive explanation. And suddenly, everyone is sprinting down a hill that nobody meant to climb in the first place. The episode I want to talk about today centers around a simple misunderstanding involving money and pride. Jack is trying to prove he's financially responsible. That's the seed. That's all. No grand deception, no villain, just a man who wants to look competent in front of the people he lives with. It begins innocently. Finds a notice tucked under the door from the landlord, Mr., reminding them about the rent being due a little earlier this month. She reads it casually, not worried. On the other hand, panics immediately. Her eyes widen like the building is about to be repossessed by sunset. She assumes they're late. She assumes disaster. Jack walks in mid-conversation, humming confidently, trying to look relaxed. He hears the word rent and instantly stiffens. You can see it in his posture. His shoulders pull back, his smile freezes just slightly. He hasn't forgotten the rent, but he hasn't exactly handled it either. He was planning to, of course. Tomorrow, or later, or very soon. But now the word is floating in the air. Calmly asks if he's taken care of his portion yet. There's no accusation in her tone, just a question. And here, where reactions replace reasoning. Instead of saying, "Not yet, I'll handle it today," Jack laughs, a little too loudly. The laugh echoes in the room, interprets it as guilt, narrows her eyes slightly, not suspicious yet, but curious. That tiny shift in energy is enough to spark the chain reaction. Jack, sensing doubt, he insists he's completely on top of it. He talks about financial planning like he just attended a seminar. He gestures with exaggerated confidence. He explains how responsible he's become. Now feels like she's being lectured. Feels reassured but confused. If he's so confident, why does he keep talking? The more Jack explains, the less convincing he sounds. And that's the genius of the show. Jack's reaction is so big that it replaces what could have been a simple, logical moment. Instead of clarity, we get performance. John plays this beautifully. His hands move too much. His smile stretches too wide. His voice jumps an octave when he emphasizes words like absolutely and completely. He exchanges a glance with, it's not a dramatic glance. It's subtle, but that glance becomes its own reaction. Jack sees the glance, and now he's spiraling. He demands to know why they're looking at each other like that. Insists they're not. Insists everything is fine. The room fills with denial layered on top of suspicion, layered on top of wounded pride. Nobody stops to reason through the original issue. That's the pattern. The show thrives on it. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Three's Company resonated because it mirrored a very specific social energy. Young adults living independently, financial instability, pride, reputation, appearances. There was always something to prove, especially for Jack, who had to maintain the pretense of being romantically uninterested in women to keep the apartment. His entire living situation was built on managing perception. So when something threatens how he's perceived, like being seen as irresponsible, his reaction is immediate and theatrical. The situation escalates when Mr. drops by unexpectedly. Perfect timing. He breezes in with his dramatic flair, scarf perfectly adjusted, eyebrows already raised as if he suspects something entertaining. He asks if everyone received his reminder notice. Jack, without thinking, blurts out that everything is already handled. Handled how? Asks. And instead of answering calmly, Jack doubles down. He claims he personally arranged everything in advance. He implies he might have even paid early. The lie isn't huge. It's just unnecessary, a reaction disguised as competence. As head tilts slightly, smiles nervously, beams with admiration. Now Jack is trapped by his own performance. The comedy here isn't in the lie itself. It's in how fast Jack reacts to protect his pride. He doesn't pause, he doesn't think. He reacts. And each reaction pushes him further away from the simple truth. Later, when privately asks if he actually paid yet, he becomes defensive again. He accuses her of doubting him. She wasn't doubting him. She was clarifying. But because he reacts emotionally, her neutral tone becomes an attack in his mind. That's another key to why this show worked so well in its era. Communication was simpler, but social pressure was intense. Pride mattered. Being seen as capable mattered. And in a sitcom format, those pressures become comedic fuel. Jack decides to prove himself by scrambling to get the money together immediately. He rushes around the apartment looking for spare cash, knocking over a stack of mail in the process. He accidentally sends a lamp wobbling off balance. Physical comedy blends seamlessly with emotional chaos. Seeing him flustered, assumes he's overwhelmed and tries to help. Her help, however, involves offering to sell some of her things impulsively, tries to stop her, overhears fragments of the conversation and misinterprets everything. Now believes they're in serious financial trouble. His reaction is dramatic. He gasps loudly. He insists he understands hard times. He suggests payment plans. The more compassionate he becomes, the more embarrassed Jack feels. The embarrassment fuels more denial. Reactions have completely replaced reasoning at this point. The original issue, rent due slightly early, was never catastrophic. But now it feels catastrophic because everyone is reacting to each other's tone instead of the facts. One of my favorite parts of this episode is a silent beat where Jack stands frozen between and trying to calculate how to maintain his dignity. His face flickers between confidence and panic. That pause, that microsecond of visible internal conflict, is where the laughter lives. Timing is everything in Three's Company. The writers understood that silence can be louder than dialogue. A raised eyebrow from, a confused smile from, a self-satisfied nod from. Those reactions build tension before anyone even speaks. Eventually, the truth comes out in the most anticlimactic way possible. Casually mentions that she already dropped off the full rent earlier in the day, including Jack's portion, because she assumed he was busy at work. Oh, there's a beat. Jack blinks. Oh, blinks. Oh, blinks. All that chaos, all that scrambling, all that pride. And the issue was already resolved. Jack's shoulders slump. He tries to laugh it off, pats him on the back, still slightly confused, gives him that knowing smile, hugs him dramatically relieved. The room resets. What makes this funny decades later is how recognizable it is. We've all reacted too quickly. We've all defended ourselves before confirming whether we needed to. We've all turned simple questions into emotional battles. Three's Company endures because its misunderstandings are emotional, not technical. The facts are rarely complicated. It's the reactions that complicate them. Jack Tripper drives most of the comedy because he reacts first and thinks second. But he's not malicious. He's human. He wants to be admired. He wants to look capable. And that desire makes him overcompensate. This grounded skepticism balances him. She observes before reacting, but even she gets pulled into the chaos when Jack's energy spikes. Operates from feeling, so she mirrors the emotional tone of the room instantly. And Mr. amplifies everything by interpreting half-heard conversations with full confidence. It's a perfect storm of reaction. Culturally, the show tapped into a transitional moment in American life. Independence was expanding. Gender roles were shifting. Roommate dynamics were becoming more common. There was freedom, but also anxiety about reputation and responsibility. Three's Company wrapped all of that tension in bright colors and laugh tracks. And somehow, even now, it still works. Because we still misread tone. We still react before reasoning. We still assume the worst when someone laughs too loudly or answers too quickly. That's why episodes like this feel timeless. The clothes might date the show, the hairstyles might scream another era, but the emotional mechanics are evergreen. If you rewatch this episode, pay attention to how quickly Jack jumps to defend himself. Notice how every reaction triggers another. Notice how nobody pauses long enough to say, "Let's slow down." That's the joke. Oh, the humor isn't just in the misunderstandings. It's in the speed of the reactions. And honestly, that's what makes Three's Company such a comforting show to revisit. It reminds us that sometimes chaos isn't caused by major problems. Sometimes it's just a room full of people reacting louder than necessary. If you've ever turned a simple conversation into an unnecessary performance, you'll probably see a little bit of yourself in Jack here. And maybe that's why it's still funny. So if you haven't watched it in a while, go back and find an episode where the issue is small, but the reactions are enormous. Watch how quickly pride replaces clarity. Watch how silence becomes suspicion. And see if you don't start laughing before the characters even realize what they've done.